trying to make this thing fit, and you know the saying, measure twice, cut once. Well, Jeff taught me something that I think doesn't get nearly enough credit. That is, measure 10 times, cut 20 times. And so that's the method I'm using to get this piece to fit.
I'm Brian. Join the adventures as I share what I learned restoring a hurricane-damaged catamaran with the dream to sail the world.
Alright, remember, coming back into the master cabin, got the little dressing room area. The master cabin where I got a lot of, where this whole wall was gone and the ceiling was gone, but I've still got that spot right over there. That's what I gotta do, but I was short foam. I went and picked up foam. So let's cut that whole thing out and figure out what to do with this place.
Now the fiberglass deck will support itself with the entire section missing, but I like to jack it up a little bit because it gets it perfectly in alignment, and I want to get it back in alignment so that everything is exactly square when I put it back together. Now that first small hole was cut there because I was originally just going to patch some foam in, but after looking at it, it was too bowed and cracked. I just decided I wanted to replace all of the damaged foam, and so I had to go down and pick up another piece of 1/2-inch core cell. I had more of the lightweight stuff I was using for the interior, but for this piece I wanted to make sure I was using the same core cell that was used on the rest of the boat.
Last night I laid up this piece, both sides. Well, I did the one side during the day and the other side in the evening, and so this piece is ready to cut out. I did have this little extra section here. This is for the a new bulkhead for the keel. Let's get up to the boat. Can't forget the tools in the water and the camera. Here we go. Of the boat, right in there is the master cabin, and you can see, actually you probably can't see, that bulkhead is right there. So this bulkhead sits right here. So I gotta open up these compartments and get access to this side. I got a bunch of junk in there, so we're gonna have to clean that out. There we go. Locker is mostly cleaned out. Look at that nice opening we have. Whew. Yeah, where is this Florida winter, man? It's so stinking hot. Alright. I'm gonna get this kind of up into place, and then I'll try to mark it from the other side and cut it out.
With a double complex edge where you need to trace it, I find it's better to at least rough it in first. And then after you rough it in, then you can trace along with an offset in order to get it right. Otherwise, if you do the offset when it's way far away with this compound edge, it just never works right.
All right, back here in the cockpit, back in the locker. Oof. There it is. Let's get this thing marked.
Because I sold my house in Florida, when I'm working on the boat down there, I'm camping out in my RV. And one of the interesting things is my mom, who normally lives in Sweden, comes to visit us in the United States for, I don't know, a few months every year. So she decided to stop by, and so she was staying with me while I was camping out, working on the boat. So in this next section of the video, after I fit this piece in here, I needed to laminate this section as well as the back section. So she came and videoed and asked a bunch of questions. And one of the interesting things is she was like, "Oh, we should just run this thing the whole time straight so people can see how long it actually takes to do this." And well, I didn't think that was a good idea, but it took us about 3 hours of lamination. So you'll see the timer on it. And I cut it down to, I don't know, 15 minutes of video, but it'll really give you an idea of how long it takes. But it takes a lot longer than that. So I spent a lot longer than 3 hours prepping this, gluing this piece in, sanding out all of the filler that was there, and getting this all prepped and ready for the piece that I'm going to put in. It's crazy how much dust that filler makes when you grind it out. And I was actually a little surprised how much filler there was on this back. And I'm not going to back wall. I'm not going to put as much in. And I think the newer boats, they do it slightly differently than this. But one of the things that worked really well is to have that fan. I put the fan up in the vent, and it just sucks it out. And so I would sit there grinding, and it would get so bad I couldn't see anything. And so then I would just stop for a minute, let the fan suck all the dust out, and just keep going. Yeah, and even though it was winter, it was getting pretty hot. So what I decided to do is I decided to do all the lamination in the evening as well as finish the grinding. And no matter how much grinding you do and how perfect you think you have it, after you spend some time cleaning up and getting everything all vacuumed up and cleaned out, you realize, oh, there's still more grinding to do. And you've got to go back and grind some more until you have it just right. A little more cleaning, blow the dust out, and it's ready to go. So I'm going to put paper down because I'm going to cut the glass on here.
Okay. And you want to be careful not to contaminate your glass with any dirt. Okay. Like grease or oil. Okay. And it'll help keep some of the stuff that drops off of it. Okay. Having to sand it back off.
Alrighty. So you don't have to do the whole piece, you just have to do the crack.
Yep.
Okay.
Bring it in. And this gives it some extra strength on the bottom.
Okay. And this is enough strength that it'll hold the top part of the deck up to keep the boat's shape.
Yeah, well, it held it up when it wasn't even there, so.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's gonna be
That's
okay.
a good sign it's a sturdy boat, I guess.
I usually rough cut them.
Okay.
And then I'll go back and trim it.
Alrighty. Is it best to have rounded corners rather than square like that, or does it matter?
That makes a big difference.
Okay.
Because what happens if something starts to crack, it likes to crack in a straight line. And so the more rounded stuff you have, the more or the less chance you're going to get cracks.
That makes sense.
Or when it does crack it.
Okay. Now it just has to go up to the edge and not around the edge?
Yeah, because there's already like 2 layers here.
Okay.
Going like this. And
going around it?
Yeah. And
okay.
So that's all intact still.
Alrighty.
So I'm just...
So the piece that was missing is the piece in the middle. And the rest is the old stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's the piece right there.
Yep.
Yeah, you can see the reason that I replaced it, if you look,
it's really warped.
It's warped, yeah.
Yeah, really warped. I noticed that. I tried to lean it up against the wall and it didn't want to stay.
I was going to just repair the cracks in it, which you can do, but because it just compressed down and it bowed out too much.
Okay.
Get it straight. There's different cloth patterns.
Okay.
And so this is 0 and 90. It runs this way and this way.
Okay.
But that's not as good for doing corners like this.
And why's that?
because the direction that goes like this doesn't do anything.
So it's better not to have such strong stuff going that way?
Well,
It's
not,
better to
not
have it the other
strong
way?
stuff. You want it to go crosswise, 45.
Okay, well that makes sense. So even though it doesn't seem like a lot to him, he's done an amazing amount of work.
It's not really a good thing to sit there and compliment me on the...
I'm sorry, you can take it out, but I prefer to have it left in. I think it is. I think you need to recognize when you get discouraged, especially, how very, very much I've gotten done. I mean, I can't believe that huge hole is not there anymore. And the boat looks straight and plumb, and what more could you ask? So I'll get those little compliments in when he's not listening.
I'll edit them all out.
You would.
I will.
Not all of them. I'll stick some of them back in if I have to. Here's the epoxy.
So this is thickened epoxy, Cabasil. So this is kind of a weird thing that I do. That I don't know, maybe someone else does it, but
What's that?
normally you want to have a radius corner in here.
What's a radius corner?
So you know, like a curve
Okay.
in this corner, because the glass can't make a 90.
Right. Yeah.
So most people will make their fillet. Let's call it fillet. Make their fillet, let it dry, and sand it. I do it wet. So I got this glued in, and then I'll make these fillets, and while they're still soft, I'll put the glass in.
Okay.
And then you can still
squish it.
you can squish it
Yeah.
and get it into its shape. You just have to do it just right.
Beat sanding.
Wait for the right curve.
Okay.
And it's kind of a cheat way to make the fillet, because you don't even have to have the fillet perfect, because you can shape it with the glass.
Okay. That works.
Be careful that you don't squeeze it the wrong way when you do that,
Yeah.
or squeeze it too much. But the key is to let it set just the right amount.
Okay.
And so this stuff will be kind of set up by the time I get around to that other stuff, and it'll be just perfect. But you let it set too much, and you'll get
too hard.
It's too hard. You can't push it, and then
Then you have lumpy bumps.
and then you'll get air bubbles, and that's really bad. So you got to do it just right to get it to work that way. But I've had pretty good luck with it.
What do you think about when you're doing this? It's like a mindless job, so you gotta have your mind on something.
It's not mindless at all.
It takes a lot of concentration.
Yeah, you gotta be planning ahead
Okay.
of when the epoxy's gonna set. What you're gonna
Okay.
do next, how much more to mix. So
Alrighty.
there's a lot of timing. If you screw up the timing,
Okay.
it's a big problem.
Does that stuff wash off, or do you have to use special stuff to get it off your tools and stuff?
No, it doesn't wash off.
Okay.
Once it dries, sometimes depends on if it's plastic, you can break it off.
So like your red, scraper thing there.
Yeah, it'll usually come off of that once it's dry, especially if you get it at the right time.
Okay.
But and then a lot of times the buckets are reusable at least a couple times, so I can use the scrapers a couple times and the buckets a couple times.
Okay.
But it won't come off your hands or your skin without acetone.
Yeah. Now, do you have to wait any time after you coat it before you put it up on the wall, or can you just put it up immediately?
You can put it up immediately. I like to let it sit a little bit because it helps the soak in.
Oh, okay.
Also, when I roll it, it helps.
Just like wallpaper. You book it. where it looks the lighter white, I mean the whiter white instead of more clear, is that soaked through or not?
No, that's not so
Okay,
clear. Everything
so you
has
have to make sure it's all clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that you want to have as least amount of epoxy as you can.
Okay, and why is that?
Because the same reason you get the glass is a lot stronger than the epoxy.
Uh-huh.
And if you get a big fat layer of epoxy in between, the glass doesn't work as one unit.
Oh, okay, that makes
And
sense.
so lots of epoxy is actually weaker
That's interesting.
and it's heavier. So usually you like these spots here, you can just work as you work out the bubbles.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a bunch of spots before.
Uh-huh. No, they're just disappearing.
Yeah, just work the epoxy into them. Because you don't want to put too much epoxy. Sounds.
Well, that white just disappears when you rub the stuff on it, doesn't it?
You can't just put it on the surface. You gotta
Get it in
get it
there.
all the way through. And so, like with this cloth going this direction,
Uh-huh.
it'll work it in.
Okay. You
And
gotta
you
be
can
real
wanna-
sure you get the edges, don't you? Or do
Well,
you
these
just
edges
grind
are
those
gonna get
off?
ground off.
Yeah.
So.
How long working time do you have with this thickness of epoxy?
20 minutes a batch.
Okay.
That's what I do about.
2 pieces?
No, I do one per batch.
Okay.
And I can get a little bit, get started on it. Like I've got a little bit left here.
Okay.
So like I'll start on this guy. One of the things that affects how fast it cures is how much you have in the pot.
Why's that?
Because when it's in a group like that, it'll kick off what's called exotherm, get really hot,
Oh,
and it'll cure the whole thing instantly all the way till it starts smoking and maybe even catches on fire.
that's not good.
Yeah, so it's not good. So if I leave that much in there and I start putting this out, now it's pretty cool today, so I don't think that would happen right now, but I don't like that.
So you do a couple pieces and let it
So I
rest.
try to get it as used up as quickly as possible,
Okay.
and then you come back and
Now, people that work in cold temperatures, they don't have these issues?
no, they have other issues, which means it doesn't cure, it takes days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and you can get different speeds of hardener. This is medium, I think.
Okay. So you prefer working with small batches and having about a 20-minute work time,
Yeah.
even if it takes time going out and mixing up more.
Yeah, well, you know, the trade-off is
Yeah.
you use slow, and then you've got to wait 2 days for it to cure.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's probably good because you'd end up wasting quite a bit, I would imagine, if you made a big batch and you couldn't get it used up before it
Yeah.
set up.
Well, but even when it's pretty cold, you can get the exotherm to kick off because it creates heat from a chemical reaction,
Okay.
and then that heat it just creates a chain reaction in the pot with it that thick,
Okay.
and it's not good. The other thing is, the sooner I can get it on the cloth, like if it thickens up a little bit, that's when you can't get it on the cloth. You can still apply cloth as if it's already got the resin embedded. If it's a little bit kicked, but if it starts to kick and thickens up, it just won't wet out the cloth.
Okay. So how many times did you have to do it wrong before you found out how to do it right?
spots. Even different things go wrong different times.
Yeah, I would imagine, because it's quite sensitive to things, it seems.
Yeah, it's not real bad though. I mean, you work in small batches, you kind of stay out of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of works.
Have you ever had it not set up?
Nope. It's always set up.
Uh-huh.
I've had it kick into exotherm several times.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Before you were ready.
and have it start smoking and stuff and just throw it out the back of the boat.
Oh, okay.
While it's smoking, it's pretty easy to do that.
Uh-huh.
Especially if it's outside and you set it in the sun.
Yeah.
It can happen real quick.
Whoa. So actually working inside is probably a little easier.
Yeah. I just put that up backwards.
It's a nice thing it's wet all the way through so you can change sides. It's actually probably good for it.
It has mat on one side, which is just kind of loose fibers.
Okay.
That helps it adhere to
Uh-huh.
something better. And so, and the problem is if you have the mat on the top side, if you can't squeegee hard like this on mat, it just starts
Okay.
coming off and making a mess.
Okay. So you
Normally-
want the smoothest side out.
Well, there's a lot of reasons to do it differently, but you have to use normally you'll use a fin roller where people will squeegee this out. Not everybody does it with just with a squeegee. Most people use a fin roller.
Okay.
And you have to if you use mat because otherwise it just scrapes the mat off.
Okay, yeah.
But with this unidirectional, it squeegees really nice. You can press as hard as you want and none of the fabric comes off.
Uh-huh.
And so you can't do this with mat. But that's what I noticed. As soon as I start doing that, I start seeing mat loosen up. I'm like, wait,
That's
it's the wrong
not
side.
good, yeah. Be kind of interesting to run one of these whole things so they can see how very long it does take.
Nobody wants to really see how long it takes. They just want to be entertained.
Well, if they saw how long it takes, you probably wouldn't convince anybody to do one.
See, and then I gotta go do the other side too.
Uh-huh. The outside?
Well, it's in that locker. I gotta crawl down under that locker and do the same thing.
Oh, man.
One little thing seems so easy, and then it's
Yeah.
once you
it's
realize.
like, okay, it's twice as much.
How much work these things really are.
But, you know, You imagine what you're going to have when this is all done and the wonderful time you'll have out in the ocean. And after all your hard work, all the people will be bumming rides from you. Like your mom. Although, I don't know, help with mucking it out and pressure washing and holding the camera once in a while. Stuff. It's got to be worth something. So, like, if it started setting up right now, what would you do?
Well, if the stuff on the wall won't set up,
Okay.
the stuff in here might set up,
Okay.
and I would just throw it out
Throw
the
it
back of the boat. It doesn't catch anything on fire.
So it doesn't set up when you're working it.
I mean, it will, but it's because it's so thin. It once it's on the glass,
Okay.
you have quite a bit of time to work it.
Good.
So if it really started to set up like on here, you'd have to be
Moving fast.
yeah. And if that's the case, then what you'll end up doing is just leaving it and grinding it off and redoing it.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be a bummer.
Yeah. I've done that before.
Ugh.
Well, generally not because of that. Usually because, well, my biggest problem is overhead, getting air bubbles in overhead stuff, and then having to redo that. But that doesn't really happen anymore. I kind of got it figured out. I think I have been through about 30 gallons
Oh
of
my
resin.
gosh. Wow.
To give you an idea, we won't even use a quarter of a gallon tonight. We'll probably use a quarter of a gallon maybe. By the time we do that piece, that piece is going to take a while.
Yeah.
It's a big piece. It's like sculpting.
Yeah. Much messier.
This part I don't mind at all, actually. I enjoy doing
It's
the
the
class work.
sanding.
Yeah, grinding and sanding is horrible. I don't really care for that too much, but this part is kind of fun.
As the night wears on, the questions stop as we both start getting tired. But I still want to get as much glass up as I can in one setting so that it can be wet on wet and get a better chemical bond. And so I just keep pushing through, trying to get this last giant piece up on the back. Well, actually, I have this one, and then I do one more on top of this. Hanging up these large vertical pieces can be a little precarious at first because as you put it up, one false move and the whole thing can come down, especially this one here that is partially overhead. It's always a little bit difficult. And you get it just about there, and then if you let go of one thing or something doesn't stick, it just the whole thing falls again. It's horrible. Those corners are always tough because as soon as you squeegee the one side, the other one pulls loose, and you squeegee the top, the other one pulls loose, and you get a little air in there. And so I spend a lot of time just making sure that there's no air in there. And sometimes it helps to just run your finger along that seam, especially when I have a little bit, the fillet is still a little soft. It really helps it bind in there. Just a few last final touches and squeegeeing out, make sure everything looks good. And it's time to call it a night.
Turned out really good. So, new layer across this bulkhead. And that first layer wraps around, and we got another layer of tabbing on there. Tabbed at the corners, tabbed it's all solid. Still need to do the other side. That's in the locker. Thanks for watching this week's episode of Brian Sailing. I hope you enjoyed it. This was from my previous trip to Florida, and by the time you watch this, I'm probably already back down in Florida the next trip. I've still got one more video coming out with lots of boat repairs from this trip, and there'll be lots more on this next trip. I've got my engine parts, so I'll be finishing rebuilding the other engine, so we'll have full coverage on that, so it should be pretty cool. So be sure to like this video, subscribe. Those comments, they really keep me going, so I really appreciate it. And I've got some comments saying that from people that say, oh, I wish I had half your energy, I wish I had your motivation. Well, you know, that's just because it's an illusion, right? Because it's video. You just only have video with you working, because most of the time, if I videoed my whole life, most of the time you'd see me like this, just sitting on the couch, too tired to do anything. I better finish editing that video. All right, till next time, take care, my friends. Live your dreams.